how do you like living in communist America?
It's what they call surreal, you know, because you didn't think it would happen, but here we are.
Biden, he struck down that Keystone Pipeline.
Yep.
Immediately killed 11,000 high-paying jobs.
Yeah.
But it's much more than that, because every one of those high-paying jobs generates other business. They buy things from stores, gas stations, hardware stores, lumber companies. So a lot of those jobs will go too, because
it's not just the people that's working the pipeline.
Yeah, so he's killed thousands and thousands of jobs just for
with a stroke of a pen.
For all his foolishness.
It is. It's just foolishness.
A lot of those same people they threw their jobs are ones who voted him in.
I know.
They're going to learn a bitter lesson.
Yep. It's a hard one. Yeah. It's a hard lesson.
But I wonder what will happen. Well, I'll tell you, this country has just thrown the whole, everything that brought down the blessings of God, they're outlawing it.
Yeah.
And you wonder, what will they do when the blessings are all taken away? Won't be any fun after that. Some guy walking right down the middle of the street up here, looks like. Or are they on the edge?
He's in the middle. Right in the middle.
Wearing black clothes so you can't hardly see him in the dark.
Looks like you got a shiny thing right in the middle.
Yeah.
It doesn't help us.
He's over to the side.
It doesn't help him get out of our way. There he is. He's crossing.
Yeah, I got him. All right. Whoever you are, may God bless you.
Yeah, I just, it's beyond reason.
Clear?
Yes, sir. It is certainly beyond reason, because all their strategies for doing whatever they're doing, it doesn't make any sense.
Every single thing they're doing is promoting abortion like mad.
Yeah.
Voting in millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood again.
Yeah.
Trying to get rid of all these rules against it. Voting for all this crazy transgender and other gender-related issues.
And they will pack the court. They will bring in other states. And man, it's
they're doing everything that Sodom and Gomorrah did on steroids, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
They can make Sodom look like a beginner at it, kindergarten level.
And, you know, Trump was no angel, but he represented a clear choice. That's for sure.
Yeah,
and, you know, rather than debate whether it was a stolen election anyway, which I think it was.
The man after God's own heart, King David, was no angel either.
Yeah.
He murdered one of his best soldiers.
Yeah.
So he could steal the guy's wife.
Yeah.
But here he is, the man after God's heart. So I don't think God is so turned. Well, here's the Apostle Paul. What did he do for the first many years of his life? Murder as many of the Lord's people as he could.
Yeah.
Sent a lot of them to prison, misery, and everything else. Yet here he ends up writing half of the New Covenant for us. If God only looked for perfect people to use, he'd have a real shortage, wouldn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, we shall see. Would you like to have a koof?
What's that? Oh,
it's the 19th letter of the Hebrews.
Yeah, let's get to it.
Right here on the dash for you.
Oh, okay.
Number 19.
Wait, this is Saudi.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, then I got you the wrong one. There is a koof.
Is it back in the back?
Yeah, it's in my book.
I'll have to wait till I get all this stuff off my...
And I saw a koof letter, and I thought that was it, but I picked the wrong... They were stacked together, I guess. The reason I had a Saudi with it, Tommy missed last week, and she wanted it, so that was Saudi, so I brought one for her, and somehow I managed to get it stuck with a koof.
Okay.
There's one right behind me, though.
Okay. Well,
I have a whole bunch of them in my book. I was looking through it. I had to stop at the hardware store and get some paint. And,
oh, yeah?
And some spray paint that Alex wanted. And
she fixing that table?
Yeah. So anyway, I stopped over there while it was daylight. I was thumbing through the book, finding him. have a whole bunch of the old copies of different ones. Had a hard time finding. I finally found one. Oh, there's one right there. Then I grabbed the wrong one. Okay. We started our lesson yesterday. I said, why are we studying numbers and letters? What does that got to do with anything? Why does it matter? Well, how would you answer that? If someone asks you, why should you study Hebrew letters and numbers?
Because they point to God.
What do you get for studying them?
You learn who God is and how He planned for us and His purpose for us and how He's a great architect. Speaking about that same idea, I listened to something yesterday on a video. So good. I think I might have talked about it before, but there's this guy, I think his name's Stephen Meyer, and he is a cutting edge scientist. He's also a believer.
Yeah.
And he is essentially moving the scientific community towards accepting the idea that a creative design is basically the only reasonable argument
for creation.
Yeah,
for the universe.
And he's doing it from a scientific perspective, which is basically the equivalent of rewinding the clock. It's more than 100 years. It'd probably be 125 or 150 years, because back in those days, probably before Darwin, people were all believers. For the mostly speaking, yeah. And everybody in the scientific world presumed that there was a creator behind everything.
Yeah.
And so, when they approached it with what we call the scientific method, that's what they were assuming. They were assuming, okay, well, that there's a creator, so we can start from there.
Yeah.
And, what has happened with the humanists taking over science, unjustly, I think you're going to have to get in front of that truck for him to know that you're serious.
I think I'll just go down to the next turn in.
Yeah, okay. Slow down by then. So this guy, now some of these things are pretty new developments, but he's basically a philosopher who has applied the philosophy and the science to the question of, is there a design behind the universe?
Yeah.
And some of the things that he's putting on the table is some stuff that scientists have ignored for a while.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you can't prove Darwin. You can't, because there's no evidence. It's just a speculation.
Yeah.
And so basically what he was saying is that on the chemistry level, on the genetics level, that scientists have not really said anything, but they've known for years that it's statistically impossible for evolution to have occurred as they've said.
Yeah. And
the reason is it's all mathematics, because once the physicists decided, pretty much across the board, that there was a thing called a Big Bang.
Yeah.
Then what that did is it cut off the legs of everybody who was trying to prove evolution, because the one requirement of evolution is that it takes a great amount of time.
Yeah.
And so what that did is it said, you don't have as much time as you think you did. Yeah. So it cut out their argument to say, okay, so now we're dealing with a shorter window of time.
Yeah.
which statistically speaking, they don't have a case anymore.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is from a statistical probabilities perspective, plus like chemistry. See, what they try to do is try to recreate a creation type event in a laboratory.
Yeah.
And all their presumptions is if we can get to a point where we have a creation type event, then it could happen by itself.
Yeah.
That's what they want to prove, but what they're actually proving is that these long shots that they're taking aren't happening, and even if they get something close, to bringing all the proteins into the right place at the right time, statistically speaking, what would happen after that is actually walking away from their hypothesis, because their hypothesis is that it could happen. But where they're wrong is that statistically they're whipping out the real long shots that any of this stuff could actually just happen. And further than that, the complexity that it would take for all of those things to happen one on top of each other is just, it's astronomically impossible. And so, it's good. It's fun.
You never want to try to prove truth. Truth does not need to be proved and cannot be proved. And because our understanding of God is not because we've been logically, it's been proven to us.
Right.
You take it by faith, which has to do with just a heart attitude of acknowledging God, and to try to prove anything, you can't do it. And God never tries to prove anything. He just makes a statement. This is the way it is.
That's right.
Take it or leave it. Yeah, if you can read my book there, we can find that.
Yeah, and that's not the purpose of me bringing that up, getting excited about it. I just think it's great that
one of those.
There it is.
There's one right there.
There's one.
Just put that Saudi back in. That's the one I was probably found, and I grabbed the wrong one.
There you go.
If you can put that other one back in. Once you put that one there.
All right.
This one will be yours.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about it because, all those. I remember the first time I was sitting in a science class and they said, "We know you guys were taught this, but really,
you're gonna pour some coffee for
it. This is really what it's all about."
Yeah.
And I was like, it's a stretch, They're just.
You've heard of what they call circular reasoning.
Yeah.
Let's find some
You want to save some?
Yeah, for the next couple. They'll find some dinosaur fossils, and they say these fossils are 250 million years old. Oh yeah, how do you know that? Because they're in these rocks, and these rocks are 250 million years old. Well, how do you know the rocks are 200? Because these fossils are found in them, and they're 250 million. So how do you know they're? Because they're in these 250 million year old rocks. And that's what's called circular reasoning.
Yeah. That's exactly what that dude said in that lecture I watched him on yesterday. He said he was the kind of kid that would always ask why.
Yeah.
And his professors caught on to him that he was never satisfied with circular reasoning.
Yeah. Well, this whole concept they call science, it pretends to be able to explain everything from some point that's supposed to be undeniably right.
Right.
But they're full of what they call theories.
Yeah.
What's a theory?
It's just speculation.
Just an idea that may or may not be true. Not definitely wrong, but not definitely true either. So, anyhow, when the Lord says, in the beginning, God, there's no attempt to prove that.
No.
It just says that's it.
And
you either accept it or you deny it. If you deny it, you might as well slam the book. It doesn't have one more word for you. That's it. And the Bible is not written to the unbelievers, it's written to believers. If you don't believe it, it doesn't say anything to you. It's just fairy tales, you know. Might be interesting or it might be entertaining, but it's not true if you're not a believer. Just like when the Pharisees said John the Baptist Elijah has to appear before the Messiah. And so if they don't see Elijah, then that proves that the Messiah hasn't come. And the Lord said, if John the Baptist is Messiah, is Elijah, if you believe. But if you're not a believer, he's not Messiah. Or not Elijah, I mean. Remember, the Pharisees sent investigators out to John to ask him who he was. They said, are you the Elijah? No, he says, I'm not. But the Lord said, if you're a believer, he is Elijah. So was John right or wrong when he said, I'm not Elijah?
No, he's right.
He's not Elijah if you're not a believer. But if a believer asks him, are you Elijah? What would his answer have to be?
Yeah.
I am. But is he a reincarnation of the man Elijah?
Mm-mm.
No, he's not. But he comes with the same mission, the same purpose, and the same spirit. He's there for one purpose. What's he there for anyway?
Point to Yeshua.
Yeah, to prepare the way. You know,
Yeah.
He said, I've come to prepare, and I'm just a voice in the wilderness. So
Crying
Isaiah
out.
prophesied there'll be a voice crying in the wilderness. Prepare the way of the Lord. So here he is. That's John. That's Elijah. But it doesn't mean he's a reincarnation of Elijah. But he's simply here doing what Elijah came to do, you know. You might say he's another Elijah, or Elijah in a slightly different form. But so the whole thing is written to believers. Truth doesn't say anything to a non-believer, does it?
Mm-mm.
What does a non-believer do with truth? Just
Cast it under his
tramples
feet.
in the mud, right?
Yeah.
There's no use for that. So here's, the Lord said, I am the truth. And here, who is he talking to when he said, I am the way, the truth, and the life?
People who believe him.
Yeah. Well, he said that to Pharisees too, didn't he?
Yeah.
But what'd they do with his words?
And twisted them around.
They said he's a fraud. It's
Yeah.
all lies. So they just twisted, distorted it, and said he casts out devils in the name of Beelzebub. What's Beelzebub?
False God.
Mm-hmm. His answer to them was, well, whose name do you cast them out under? So how many devils did the Pharisees cast out?
None.
When he said, who do you cast them out by?
That was a trap, wasn't it?
Yeah. So you say, I'm casting out devils in the devil's name. So you don't cast any of them out. So what
Yeah.
good are you, you know? Alice, many years ago, sold Mary Kay products, you know. And Mary Kay's company had a policy of giving their managers a pink Cadillac.
I remember that.
And somebody made fun of those pink Cadillacs, and somebody said, well, what color are the Cadillacs your company gives you, you know?
Yeah. There was a lady, my mom's neighbor sister. She's a young lady, probably, 5 to 10 years older than me, probably
Yeah.
10 years older than me, and she came back from college and she tried this and that, but she got into Mary Kay pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
And man, she's been pedal to the metal ever since.
Yeah.
And she's had many a Cadillacs.
Yeah, some of them do real good with it.
She's done quite well.
So what do you think of number 19?
Kof.
The letter is Kuf. Kuf,
Kuf?
not Kof. Kuf.
Kuf, huh?
Yeah. They spell it in this way it was spelled in one of them is Koof.
Yeah.
Just like roof, roof. kuf. It's sometimes spelled K-U-F, sometimes spelled Q-U-F. But, when you're trying to write a Hebrew word or letter in English letters, you just use letters that make it sound as much as you can like it.
Yeah.
The word is kuf. But that means that's the 19th letter. But how about the number 19 itself? Esrei is 10.
Mm-hmm.
Teshah is 9. Teshah, Esrei is 19, 9 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 8th prime number. You know what a prime number is?
Yeah.
What's a prime number?
They only divisible by themselves in one.
That's right. So it's the 8th one is kuf. So it's going to have some of the characteristics of the letter 8.
Okay, new beginning.
Or the number 8, which means new beginnings, yes. And the 8th letter is chet, which means life. New beginning of life. So, but it's 9 and 10. So what's 9?
I can't remember 9. 9.
Explains it right there.
Oh.
The characteristics of number 9. Can you see that good enough?
That's the right page?
Yes. You'll see.
So, 8th prime number.
Number 9.
Number 9, the finality and judgment, harvest and fruitfulness.
Each of those letters or words is a possible definition. You know how they get these definitions?
By the first occurrence of the letter?
Or by the context that they're in.
Okay.
When they see the letter or the word in a context, by reading the context, they go, what is this about, In Hebrew, generally the first word or the first part of any paragraph kind of tells you what it's all about. So the first letter of a word kind of opens up the door for what this whole thing is about. So if you see the letter kuf in a line in Hebrew, it's going to be either some one of those kind of definitions. And what is Esrei 10? What does that number mean?
The authority of God.
Yeah, absolute authority. So when you combine the 9 and the 10, you get everything that's in this number 9 definition together with the authority of God. If you had something that's in the number 9 definition, but you do not have the authority of God, read one of those definitions in number 9. What's it?
Finality.
Okay, so you got finality, but no authority of God. What do you end up with?
The end.
You want finality without God?
No.
That would be disaster, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
What if you have God, but you have no finality? Then what would you have? If you have God's authority, but nothing's final.
Judgment.
If nothing is final, but you have God's authority, but there's nothing final, then what?
I don't know.
Can you imagine God himself existing without anything being final? Anything being, his last words in his crucifixion was, I just finalized it.
Yeah.
It's finished.
Yeah.
Well, if you have God's authority, but there's no finality, what have you got?
Chaos? I'm not sure. I'm not following you.
Well, the Lord did say it's finished, didn't he, when he died?
Yeah.
What if he had said it's not finished? What would that tell you?
Well, when he said it's finished, he meant the redemptive work.
But what if he had said it's not finished? Then what?
Well, reading it backwards, we would say that he was talking about the resurrection, wouldn't we?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd say whatever he was doing is not satisfactory. It's not enough. It does not finally. He came to be the sacrifice that takes away the sins of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said it's finished, what's finished?
To taking away the sins of the world.
Whatever the work of the sacrifice was. But if he said it's not finished, then he'd say, I've done what a sacrifice does, only it doesn't accomplish what I've came to do. It didn't get the job done. So what would that tell you? If he said that.
It's not finished.
Here he is, the sacrifice come to take away the sins of the world, only it doesn't do it. He can't say it's finished. What would that tell you?
There's no hope.
There's no hope because God himself could not complete what he set out to do.
Right.
So what does that make God? He's a failure if that was the way. So when he said it's finished, it means he got done what he meant to do. So there is finality with God. If there were no finality, it would mean God himself could not finish the project. You were talking earlier about starting a project, not getting it finished.
Yeah.
What if God starts a project and said, I can't finish this? What would that tell you? God's no better than you are.
That's
if
right.
he couldn't finish his project. So when he said it's finished, he's simply saying, I did what I came to do, and nothing could stop me from doing it. The enemy tried to stop him in the Garden of Gethsemane. He said in Psalm 40, I'm surrounded by evil powers, and they're doing everything they can to put me down. They said, now that he's down, he will not get up again. What did the enemy have in mind?
A finality.
I'm going to stop him from doing what he came to do.
Yeah.
I'll put the finishing touch on this one, and it'll be a total condemnation of the Lord. If the enemy had won, that's where it would have gone. But thankfully, he did not win. So 19 represents God's finality combined with the authority of God. And if that's the case, then who wins?
God does.
Mm-hmm. And if God wins and he came to save you, what does that do for you?
It saves me.
Makes you a winner, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So, but there's something else about it. You take number 19. Ten means God's ultimate absolute authority, or God being the king or the ruler. What would 20 be? If you took the number 20. If 10 means God's authority, what would 20 mean?
Perfection of God's authority, right? Like two of them?
Yeah, double.
Yeah.
When you double something, what have you done?
You've assured its potency.
You made it twice.
Yeah.
What was absolute authority? You double that. What have you got? I mean, you've got authority. The very word 20 is matayim. Matayim.
Yeah.
And matayim means 20, but it ends in an im.
Uh-huh.
What happens when you put im on the end of a word?
Makes it multiple.
Yeah, it's not just exactly a multiple. It means it's just it
Eternal.
becomes indefinite.
Yeah.
No end to it. No finale. It becomes infinite. So the number 20 really means the infinity of God, or the absolute perfection that goes beyond imagination. So if 20 represents doubled 10, then what would 19 represent?
Falling short of that?
Yeah, 19 is 1 point less than 20, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there's a psalm that says God has made man a little lower than the angels. Where are the angels? What's their status, the angels?
Well, they can approach God
Why?
because they've been invited to. They're heavenly beings.
What do they do?
Whatever God wants them to.
Do they ever fail to do what he sends them to do? Can you injure an angel?
I don't think so.
Can one of them be killed?
I don't think so.
Can one of them come back and say to God, I tried to do what you sent me to, but I was not strong enough?
No.
Whatever an angel is sent to do, he does, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Is there anything in the earth that could stop him from being whatever or doing whatever he's sent to do?
I don't think so, no.
You know, when King David sinned against God, God sent an angel to destroy, and there was something like, 70,000 or something. I forgot how many died at the hands of this angel. And then he started heading toward the holy city, Jerusalem, and God put a stop to him. What if God had not stopped him going to Jerusalem?
Would have brought it to the ground.
He'd have destroyed everything in Jerusalem, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So and what could stop him? You know, when God sent the death angel across Egypt before Passover, what was that angel going to do?
Destroy.
Destroy what?
Destroy anything that the Lord told him to.
What did the Lord tell him to destroy?
Every firstborn in Egypt.
Okay. Of even the animals, not only the people, but even the animals.
Yeah.
So what would that angel do?
Destroy every firstborn.
Is there anybody who could keep that from happening?
No.
So angels are right up there by God. And he says he made man just a little lower than that. And a little lower means it's just right up next to what they are, not quite the same. Men aren't quite the same as angels, but they're very close. 19, how close is 19 to 20? Just 1 point away, right?
Yeah.
So 19 represents being right close to God, not God. We can't say we are God. We can't claim to be an angel, but we can be right next to that because that's what he said made man just a little lower, a little lower. A little, what is the word little lower? What does little mean?
Means just small measurement.
Yeah. It's almost like saying they're almost on the same level, but not quite. So when you say something is almost, it's really close, isn't it? And so that's where they are. 19 represents being close to what God is. Not God, but close. And so it's a very powerful number. And you read about things that happened in 19. There were 19 kings of Israel. How many of them were godly men?
Of Israel?
Yeah, of the nation.
Were there any?
Yeah, there were some. I'm not talking about just the northern tribes of Israel, but the entire nation.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there were a few. Most of
How
them were
many?
from Judah.
Do you know how many?
No.
There were 5 that could be called pretty good. I'd use the word pretty good king. Not perfect, but pretty good.
Yeah.
All of them had their problems. David certainly did. Hezekiah did. Uzziah did. Joash, I think it was, and Asa. They were kings that did much good. You know, they got rid of a lot of the idolatry and things like that. But they had their problems too. But those were all kings of Benjamin, Judah, Benjamin, the southern tribes.
Uh-huh.
The northern tribes, how many good ones were in that bunch?
None.
None. 0. They were all thugs.
Yeah.
But the total was 19. There were 19 kings. So 19, remember, why was there any kings at all?
Because the people were asking for one against God's will.
Yeah. God said, you have a king. That's God. And Samuel is your prophet. Samuel is here to represent God to you. You have that. But and in that's the way you were made. So having a king, and they recognized that, would make them almost like 19, being one just a little bit below an angel, you know. But they demanded to be like every other nation. So God sent them a king, and then he was a thug. Then he sent him another, and before it was over, he sent 19 of them all together. And, of course, 19 represents being short of the perfection of God. So how much short were they?
Or as short as they could be.
They were created to be a little lower than the angels, but they got to be a lot lower, didn't they?
Yeah.
By their own rebellion. And
yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So there were...
you know, and that's kind of an incarnational idea of the Lord because of his position as, you know, the incarnated Word of God, his potential for doing good and evil were exponentially grown, you know. Because if he'd have done evil, he would have been the most evil.
Yeah, as near as we can comprehend it, it appears that at one time all the angels of God were given the opportunity to make a choice whether they wanted to serve God or not.
Huh.
And it says a third of them elected to follow demonic forces instead.
Huh.
So,
where do we hear that?
Well, is that written in not in Revelation? Can't think where that would be. We'd have to look it up. But it says Satan drew a third of them away. Now, why would angels be given a choice to make?
Well, is it their proximity to humans that get we got to have a choice so we can have a way to go, and so we wouldn't be just robots.
Yeah, if you do things because that's who you are, by by nature, you just automatically do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Or what's a puppet? A marionette.
Yeah,
they're a little creature that looks like people, but how do they operate?
When the puppeteer pulls their strings.
Yeah. Pulls a string and the arm goes up, another string and his head waggles or something. So who controls the puppet? So what choices does the puppet make?
None.
It just does what it's made to do. It has no choice. The puppet doesn't raise his arm because he wants to. He raises it because the string got yanked.
Yeah.
So if people were not given a choice, they'd be no more than puppets, and that's not what God wants. If you have a friend who's your friend because he has no choice but to be your friend, is that what you want?
No.
You want ones who have chosen to be your friend.
Yeah.
Because that puts their heart with you. And so people are not puppets. They must be given choice. And man, look at that planet. Is that a planet right up above you?
Yeah, it must be.
Beautiful.
Wait a minute.
I think it is.
Is it moving?
Do planets have flashing red and green nav lights on them?
Yeah, I don't
No, that's an airplane.
Yeah, it's moving.
Yeah. That's he got his landing lights on so the tower guys can see him coming. That's why they do it as they approach. Yeah.
It doesn't help while you're in the sky, though, does it?
Well, it doesn't help you, but it turn on so the guy in the tower can see you out there.
But it doesn't increase your visibility at all, does it?
No, not at all. You shine lights into the sky, what do you see? Nothing. If there's fog or anything, it just blinds you.
Yeah.
But no, they don't help at all. They're only for landing or for taxiing around the ground.
So others can see you, right?
Yeah. On the ground they're on so you can see where you're going. But in the air, so other people can see your rig. But we were saying that people are not to be puppets. God doesn't want puppets, so they must be given choice. So the angels are given a choice that they could not say, we serve God because that's all we have to do.
Yeah.
They've made a choice to serve God. Now, what choices does a slave have? None. But if the angels have chosen to be servants to God, then what happens to their choices after that?
Well, they've given them voluntarily to God.
That's right. So do they have a choice after that?
No.
If God tells an angel, would you like to go out there and kill a bunch of enemies for me? Does God say that to an angel?
No.
He
says, go out there and kill my enemies.
And the angel has no choice. He does what he's told. So when the Lord was in Gethsemane, he prayed, let this pass from me. And the famous quote that so many got, but not my will, but yours.
Mm-hmm.
Is he saying my will is different from yours?
No.
If his will is different from God's, the Father's, then there's a conflict between the Father and the Son, isn't there? If his will is different.
Right.
So when he says, not my will, but yours, let's don't do what I want to do. Let's do what you want to do because I want to do something different. Is that true?
No, it's not true.
No. So when he says, not my will.
He covered that earlier. He said, everything I got is the Father's will.
Yeah. We're not even to look at anything from a point of view of my will. Why not? Because I'm a servant. A servant doesn't have a will, does he?
Right.
A servant only does one thing, is the will of the master. If a servant has a will of his own, then he's not a servant, is he?
Right.
So if the Lord did something based on His own will, that would tell us one thing. The enemy, how long would it take the enemy to catch that?
No.
You ever notice that if a politician says one wrong word, every reporter in the country catches it immediately, don't they?
Well, they used to.
Because they're listening for gaffes, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right.
If they catch one, they quickly publish it.
Yeah.
But so if the Lord said, "Not my will," meaning my will is different from that of the Father, do you think that Satan would have overlooked that one? He'd have grabbed that one in a heartbeat, and he would say, "You can't possibly be a servant because you're operating on your will." That would be true, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So when he says, "Not my will," it says, "My will has nothing to do with anything. The only will around here that matters is the will of the Father." So number 19 represents being like an angel, just right up there next to the angels. And they operate on the basis of the will of the Master. That's where 19 represents kind of that concept. Now, Kuf has a numerical value of 100. You know, in the letters, each letter has a numerical value.
Yeah.
And when I don't know if they do this in modern Hebrew, but in the old Hebrew, if they were writing, they came to want to put a number down, they'd put the letter on there that represents a number, but they'd put a little like an apostrophe mark next to the letter
To show it's a
this is
number.
not a word, it's a number.
Uh-huh.
So if you had a kuf with this little mark by it, that would say that means 100.
Uh-huh.
Doesn't mean kuf, it means 100. So you think about hundreds, and how old was Abraham when God said, "I'm going to make you into a great nation"?
99?
He was 90.
90.
Yeah. But how old was he when Isaac was born?
100.
He was 100. Noah had a son named Shem.
Yeah.
What's significant about Shem?
His name means name.
It can mean name, yes. And what came from the man named Shem?
The Shemitic people.
And who does that include?
The Jews.
Yeah. So Israel is a descendant of Shem, are they not?
Yeah.
How about Abraham? Is he a descendant of Shem?
Yeah.
Okay. So here's Noah. Now Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And the others, the Ham, probably moved into Africa. In fact, it was called the land of Ham, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then Shem, or Japheth, that is, Japheth is considered to be the European bunch, came from him, kind of off that way. But Shem represents the progenitor of the race that ultimately became the Israelites and also the Arabs.
Mm-hmm.
But so Shem had a son when he was 100 years old. So if you think that Abraham was given a son when he was 100 and Shem was given a son when he was 100, if that's all you knew about, what do you think 100 would represent?
A miracle of some sort.
What sort?
Of what we talked about earlier, fruitfulness.
Yeah. And, of course, Abraham's son Isaac became the patriarch of this nation. The Lord said, "I'm going to make a great nation out of you." How big will that nation be?
More than the sand on the seashore.
Yeah, well, I don't think it really means that there's the same number of descendants of Abraham as there was as the grains of sand, but I think he meant just like you can't possibly count the numbers of sand, you'll never be able to count the Lord's people.
Right.
Same thing, he said, it'll be like the stars. How many stars are there? There's nobody
count.
knows how many there are. They're in the trillions, aren't they?
Right.
That doesn't mean the Lord's people will be in the trillion, but it means just as you can't count them. But I said, How many exactly are there of the Lord's people? Do you know?
No.
Yes, you do. It's in the book of Revelation. Clearly it says there's
144,000.
144,000. If you ask any Jehovah's Witness how many are there, there's 144,000.
That's right.
That's what
Not
it
a
says.
mas, not a minos.
That's what is written. But 144,000, if you were a census taker, 144,000 would be the population of a medium-sized city, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Not a very big city as far as that goes. Almost any little puppet city that has 144,000. A good census crew could have that covered in a week easy, couldn't they?
Yeah.
But he said they're going to be uncountable. So where we read that number is in Revelation, and the Apostle John, who wrote that, said, I heard this message from the Lord that he was going to inflict plagues on the people. And he told the angel, don't touch him until I've sealed my people.
You want another drink?
Yes. So what's the angel doing while God's sealing his people?
Protecting them?
No, he didn't say. The angel came to put a plague on the people.
Oh.
Said, don't do it till I've got him sealed. So what's he doing while he's
doing nothing to them?
Well, he's doing something. What's the angel doing?
I don't know, assessing the situation?
No, he's waiting.
Okay.
He's got his weapon in his hand ready to inflict the people, but he's got an order, don't do anything until I've sealed the people. So just standing over there waiting for the word, isn't he?
Yeah.
All right. So the apostle said, I heard all that. I heard the number of those who were sealed. And there were 12,000 from the tribe of Reuben, 12,000 from the tribe of Simeon, 12,000 from Judah, and right on around the circle of all the 12 tribes of Israel, 12,000 from each one. 12 tribes, how many were sealed?
144,000.
That's exactly it. If you can pass third grade math, you can do that, can't you?
That's right.
12 is 144. That's how many were sealed. That's what I heard, he said. And I said, supposing you were in a building here and you heard a big loud crash outside the window, immediately what would you think? You hear this big crash. What do you think immediately? Instantly.
Something happened.
What? So you think of something. What happened?
Plane crash?
Plane crash, or two trucks ran into each other, something.
Yeah.
And as soon as you think that way, then what do?
You go investigate.
You go look. So the apostle said, I heard the number that were sealed. 12, 12, 12, 12. 144. I heard that. That's what I heard. I heard this big sound. It was 144,000. Then I turned and looked to see what it was. And he said they came from every tribe of Israel. So if you looked at it from what I heard, there was 12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. That's what he heard. I turned and looked, and what did he see?
Uncountable people.
He said, I saw a crowd that no one could ever. You could count 144,000, but he said the crowd that I saw, no one could possibly count them. They did not come from the 12 tribes of Israel. Where'd they come from?
All nations.
He said they came from every tribe, every tongue, every kindred, every nation. So what I heard was 12,000 of each of the Israeli tribes. What I had turned and looked and saw was an incountable mob, and they come from every clan, every family, every language, every place. So how many of the Lord's people are there?
Uncountable.
Uncountable. He said nobody could ever count them. So what's the 144,000 about then? Was it wrong?
No.
Well, how come you can count 144,000? You certainly can count 12 tribes, can't you? You can read about them in 5 minutes.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you say thousands, that means there's a bunch.
Yeah. Yeah, we say we got jillions of peanuts in this truck.
Right.
So how many is in a jillion?
It's uncountable.
Yeah. Somebody said there was a mass shooting in South America and 2 Brazilians were killed. Somebody said, how many are there in a Brazilian? Well,
Oh boy.
I like to use the word for that as a logo. You see, for example, up there the sign says Garden Center. Or you'll see a logo Pizza Hut or whatever that is. That's a logo, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
If you had, I asked one, I said, anybody here got a business card on them from someplace? So almost everybody got somebody's business card. So you pick out a business card. You got one in your pocket?
Probably.
Pull out a business card.
If I have one, it'll be right in here. No, I don't have one. I don't think I do. No. What were you going to say about it, though?
Well, I've got a Collided Brothers card in my pocket. I won't get it out, but if I held that card up, I could say, this is Collided Brothers.
Oh, I got you.
No, it's not. It's just a little piece of paper with some printing on it.
Right.
So what do I mean when I say this is Collided Brothers?
It represents.
It represents it. That's all. It's not really it. Collided Brothers is a big company, and they sell coffee there, and they got trucks come in and out, people going in and sitting down at a table and so on. It's not just a little piece of paper with some printing on it. So when I say this is it, it simply means this represents it. I think that's what the 12 12s and 12s in Revelation, they're a logo of the Lord's people. They could say, this is the Lord's people. Are the 12 tribes there the Lord's people?
Yeah.
And the 12,000 from each tribe, is that representative of those in that group of people?
Yeah.
But it's not really that. Are there only 12,000 of the tribe of Benjamin that are the Lord's people? How many do you think there might be out of the tribe of Reuben or Benjamin or Judah? I mean, we have no idea how many there are. And if we had no many even out of one tribe, what about all 12 tribes? And if he says they're a logo of those who come from every tribe on earth, how many tribes on earth are there anyway? How many different languages are there? How many nations are there? They come from every tribe, every kindred. How many family lines are there,
Yeah.
And so if you could say, well, these are the family of David. This is of the house of David. Okay, that's his family line. How many family lines are there?
A lot.
There's uncountable. I mean, there's millions and billions
Jillions.
of them. Yeah, jillion. There's exactly 4 jillion of them. So it comes back down to this. When he said there was 144,000, he was looking at the logo, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Just nothing but a representative of something so much greater than that. If you had a business card that had General Motors on it, you could hold the card and say, this is General Motors. How big is General Motors? I mean, that's a corporation we can't imagine how great. They're in many different countries of the world. They got millions of people working for them and putting out all kinds of products and so on. So any logo is nothing but just to point you toward what the real thing is, isn't it? It doesn't pretend to be that real thing. If it is, then the real thing is nothing but a piece of paper with some printing on it, So I think that's what he was saying there in Revelation, to help us to realize how great this salvation is. The effect of it, you can't even count, So one of the last thoughts I had about 100, Kuf has a value of 100. In the old temple that was built, there were 2 big bronze cast pillars at the doorway to the temple.
Yeah.
And they had what they called a capital, which is a kind of a crown at the top of the column. They were huge, they weighed hundreds of tons of bronze, and I forgot how tall they were, but something like 5 or 6 feet thick, and so on. And at the top, these sort of crowns, and all the way around the crowns were carved pomegranates.
Yeah.
And it says there were 100 pomegranates. What do you know about pomegranates?
Well, they have a lot of seeds. Their fruit is wrapped around each seed.
Yeah.
and they are in little sections. So,
Are they good for you to eat?
Oh yeah, it's great for you to eat.
Extreme-
Packed with vitamin C.
Yeah, extremely beneficial antitoxins and all kinds of, I don't know much about that, but from what I read, they are very, very good for you.
Yeah, it's like a superfood.
But do you ever eat one of them?
Yeah.
They're not easy to eat.
No, you got to work at it.
How do you eat a pomegranate? You just, you take an apple just to grab one and take a bite out. Can
That's
you do
right.
that to a pomegranate?
No, you got to work harder.
What is a pomegranate? What's it look like?
It's got a hard shell on it, hard leathery shell, and you
Yeah.
gotta cut one of the sections out and then pull the little pieces out.
Yeah, they got the outside is about like trying to eat a leather boot or something.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
It's tough. Yeah.
As you can see the blossom on the outside.
Yeah. And
And the fruit is real. It got a lot of juice around it. And
yeah,
got a little tiny seed on the inside of
it's
it
got all
that you
this
can eat.
white pulp around it, which is very bitter. You could eat it, but
Yeah.
it's not very good.
Yeah.
And you got to work at it. And tradition in Israel says the pomegranates have 613 seeds in them.
Really? That's
That
as
correspond
many.
to the 613 commandments in the Torah.
Oh man.
But they've proven that's not really quite true. It's traditional. They could have anywhere from 200 to 1,400 seeds in them.
Wow. 1,400.
Something like that, some huge amount. But most of them will have a range between 200 and 400 seeds. But if you just picked up a pomegranate out of a box at the grocery store, would you see anything there to eat?
No, you gotta start digging in it.
Because on the outside is not where the value is. Song of Solomon. Remember that little book?
Yeah,
What's it about?
it's a love story.
About who and who?
I can't remember their names.
Okay, if you look at the surface, remember, like every parable's got a surface meaning and a hidden meaning. On the surface, it's a picture of a woman called the Shulamite
Oh yeah, the Shulamite.
and King Solomon.
the prince. Yeah,
King Solomon was in love with this woman called the Shulamite. And what did her friends think of her?
I don't remember. Are they were for her?
No, they weren't.
They weren't.
They said
They were
she's
jealous of her.
She's ugly. She's sunburnt, which means she works out in the fields like
Yeah.
a slave.
Yeah.
If she works in the field, is she dirty?
Uh-huh.
And her hair's a mess, working out in the wind and everything. What kind of clothes does she wear?
Just a maiden's dress.
Slave workers'
Yeah.
clothes or field workers' clothes. They couldn't see anything beautiful about her. In fact, her personal appearance, they said she was ugly. But the king who saw her, what did he say about her?
He thought she was beautiful.
She's beautiful. And he said, your lips are like the halves of a pomegranate.
Yeah.
So what does he mean by that?
Because they're a really deep red color.
Is he looking at the outward appearance?
Huh.
What does God say? Man looks at the outward appearance.
Yeah.
And when he sees the outward appearance, he just sees a tough hide that's hard to get into,
Yeah.
has no idea what's in it.
Right.
But God sees the heart. So what does God see?
The seeds on the inside.
And what does he see in those seeds?
Yeah. Productivity.
Wonderful, good things, right?
Yeah.
Beauty. So the thing about a pomegranate is that the real beauty of it is hidden inside. And so it's just like with a parable. If you only look at the outward appearance, it'll tell you something. And actually, a pomegranate is not an ugly fruit. It's pretty.
Yeah.
It's red, got a nice color, nice round shape. It got a little crown on the top of it. But if that's all you saw, you could say, well, that's pretty. Let's go get bananas instead. You wouldn't buy them if you just went by what you saw, would you? Because it doesn't look like it. You could feel one. Where would you bite into one of them? You don't even know how if you've never seen one, can you see anything of value there?
No.
It's kind of a nice looking. It's not ugly or anything, but nothing worth nor spending any money on. But I can't get nothing out of that. But if you knew what's inside of it and are willing to look for it, can you see value?
Oh, yeah.
So in the story of the Song of Solomon, the king is seeing the beauty that's within, that's hidden inside. And that inward beauty is so great that he wants her more than anything. And he ends up getting her. And so, can you see a picture of the Lord and his people there?
Yeah.
Outwardly, nothing much worth looking at.
Yeah.
But inwardly, the Lord says he sees the heart. And what does he do with what he sees?
He chose us.
Says, I'm going for this one. Lays his life down for his people. How desperately does he want her? More than his own life, right?
Yeah, willing to give his life.
Why does he want her so much?
He loves her.
Why?
Why?
Outwardly, she don't look like much.
Because of who she is on the inside.
He sees what's within, and that's what he's after. And so the pomegranate represents that. So on the capitals of these bronze pillars in front of the temple, each one had 100 pomegranates around it.
Saying it's not what's on the outside.
Yeah. And 100 represents that promise of God that great things are going to happen. Remember, Abraham was 100 when he was given Isaac, and Shem was 100 when his son was born. Out of them came the Lord's people. So if you belong to the Lord's people, you're a descendant of Shem and of Isaac. Is that right?
Yeah.
Maybe not physically, but certainly within the heart you are. The Lord says there is outward Israel. There's also spiritual Israel. Israel that's of the heart. Now, outwardly, you could go to a place that handles DNA and they can find out if you're a Jew or not. They do. So if you're a Jew, then what does that make you?
Shemite.
What if the DNA did not prove you to be Jewish? So what would that make you?
Gentile?
If you're only looking at the outward, it would. But what
Yeah.
if you're looking at the heart?
Well, if your heart's turned to God, then you're one of his people.
Would the DNA show that up?
No.
Why not?
Because it's different.
Because it can't see the heart. It only
Right.
sees
different
the physical.
measuring stick, isn't it?
Sees the physical, which is part of the outward form. So it might be fun to get a DNA test and see if you got any Jewish heredity in you, but if it did, would that matter? Remember, the Lord said, circumcision doesn't mean anything, or uncircumcision. What does that word circumcision really mean in that context?
Surgical procedure?
No. That's what it means outwardly, but what does he mean when he says it doesn't
You've
mean
been
anything either?
made into a son.
Circumcision or not circumcision, it has no meaning. Neither one is of meaning anything, because that's only a look at the outward. It's what's in the heart. It said circumcision of the heart, not of the outward. If it's only of the outward, it has a certain value, but only to those who look at the outward thing, right?
Yeah.
But circumcision of the heart is what you really want, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are women required to be circumcised?
In the heart they are.
Yes, they are, but not outwardly, of course. In fact, it's strictly forbidden outwardly, because that'd be just cruelty to the body. But that's not where he's going. So this whole thing that the Lord looks on the heart, so that's the pomegranate, is a picture of that. Now the Jews have a tradition that when a man reaches 100, he's come to a place it's time for the body to return to the dust that it was made from. That's one of the traditions. So 100 would mean the end of everything. You want to go there?
Only if I'm in the Lord's care. But no.
No, because it just kind of brings everything down to a dead end, as we'd say. You know, when Abraham was 40 years old, what have you been doing for the last 40 years? The first 40 years of his life. I mean Moses.
He was sitting in the courts of Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm. What was he learning?
Who his people are.
That's one thing.
And how to be an Egyptian.
Yeah, he learned all about Egypt, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And learned who his people are. All right. Now, we know that he learned who his people were because he went out to check on them. Remember that?
Yeah.
So for the next 40 years, what's he doing?
Learn how to be a shepherd.
Yeah. Why?
Because he was in exile from the courts of Egypt, and
Yeah, but why is he learning about sheep?
he was preparing for the Lord's calling upon him.
Okay. Getting ready for what he's going to do. So now he did that for 40 years. So at the end of that time, how old is he?
80.
He's 80. All right. Remember we read in number 18, when they reach 80, what do they come to?
At that time where you will have already done what you came to do.
At 80, it says they should learn to get the strength for living. Study about getting strength for living. So at 70, you learn about gray hair. At 80, you learn about strength for living. At 90, what do you do at age 90, it says? We read that last week in the Sadi lesson.
Oh, decrepitation.
Yeah, decrepit. I mean, you're over. You're worn out. You're finished.
I heard that term used in relation to Joe Biden today.
Yeah.
Turn on the air. It's cold.
Yeah, it is cold. Let's turn on. So here's Moses at 80. When it says that's when they should be studying for strength to get along. What's he doing at age 80?
He's just getting ready to start his real business.
So what did he do to start it? What did he do?
He got a calling from the Lord at the burning bush.
Well, what did he do?
He said yes.
And he said that, but what did he do? What action did he
Took
take?
his shoes off. Listened to God. He walked over and paid attention to that bush.
Well, that was the opening door, you might say, but what really happened as a result of all that?
Went back to Egypt.
He went to Egypt. Now he's 80 years old. According to the tradition of the rabbis, he should be learning about getting strength to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, the reason he left Egypt in the first place was what drove him out of Egypt? One word.
Fear?
Fear. That's when he left Egypt the first time at age 40. When he went back to Egypt at age 80, what happened to the fear?
It wasn't there anymore.
He went to the Pharaoh who had absolute authority over everything on the earth at that time, did he?
Yeah.
Walked right up to him and made a demand to Pharaoh.
Yeah.
You don't walk up to the ruler of the world and demand anything, do you? Not if you got any fear in you. But Moses went in there with Aaron, and what did they say to Pharaoh?
It said, let the Lord's people go.
Yeah, he says, my God says, let my people go. He told that to Pharaoh. And I can picture, what do you think he looked like when he said that? He walk up to Pharaoh trembling and hesitant,
No.
Please, sir, anything like that. He walks out and sticks his finger right in his face. Let my people go. Does he sound like a frightened man?
No.
Does he sound like a weakling?
No.
But he's 80 years old.
Yeah.
So what happened when he was 90? The time when they say you should be thinking about being decrepit. What was Moses doing at age 90?
Well, he was camping in the wilderness.
Been doing it for 10 years, hadn't he?
Yeah, I've been doing it for 10 years. Going to do it for 30 more.
So what kind of shape's he in? Does he look
Pretty
decrepit?
good shape, no.
Just about worn out?
No.
No.
Probably pretty healthy.
Pretty tough old bird, wouldn't he say?
Yeah.
So that was 90. Now what was he doing when he got to be 100, when the tradition says time to put it back to the dust that came from? He's 100. Now
He was
what?
still going.
How long has he been doing it?
Been doing it for the camping 20 years.
20. What's it about 20? We just talked about 20 a bit ago.
It's to double the authority of God.
Does that sound like somebody's about ready to go to the grave?
No.
Powerful, strong.
Yeah.
And he's got 20 years yet to go.
Yeah.
How's he going to manage the next 20 years?
Same way with the double authority from God.
Now, sometimes he got into trouble. He got into bad trouble at one point when we kept him out of the promised land because he insulted God rather than honoring him at the rock. Remember where he struck the rock?
Struck it instead.
When the Lord said that was not the thing to do, and that cost him his entrance into the land. But did it cost him his salvation?
No.
Not at all. The Lord is very merciful. In fact, he kindly gave him at least a look over into the land so he could see what he was taking the people into. So that was to show kindness to Moses. But in all those numbers, he finally died at age 120. So all those numbers about the failing and the breakdown and the return to the dust, none of them happened at those numbers for him, did they? So those numbers, even though they may sound pretty good on the surface, they really represent the very shallow concept of who God is. So 19, the number 19 represents our shortage before God, connected to God's great authority. Now, did Moses have any weaknesses, any shortages?
Oh, yeah.
Plenty of them, just like we all do. But he laid down to before God, and by being connected to God like 9 is to 10, we saw wonderful things. So 19 represents being right up next to God himself and the great things that come from it all. It's really a wonderful number, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like all of them are.
Yeah, they're all good.
Yeah. You know, somebody did ask me one time, why are you always looking at those numbers and letters? Because I want to know God. You know, the Lord said, I mean, not the Lord, the Apostle Paul wrote in one place, he said, pray for me that I may know the Lord.
Yeah.
Well, here's the Apostle Paul.
Introducing the Lord to so many people.
If they think he needs to know the Lord and ask people to pray toward it, how about us?
Yeah.
Do we need to know the Lord?
Yeah, we do.
And knowing the Lord means more than just having been introduced to somebody. Somebody said, here, meet my friend Frank Zellers. Could you then say you know Frank?
No.
I met him, talked to him, said hi to him, and he said hi, we shook hands. You got to be around a guy for years before you get to know him, don't you think?
Yeah.
His wife lives with him for most of her adult life. She's not sure she wants to know him, I think. But, you know, we never know anybody perfectly because there's hidden things in people that we never see no matter what. But to say we know God would be the height of audacity, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We've met him. We know a little bit about him. We know what he said to some degree. Not sure we understand most of it, but a little of it. So it would be pretty brash to say we know God. But so when the apostle said, pray for me that I might know him, he knew far more of the Lord than I do by a long shot. But even he said, I need more prayer on that one. So what could I say? That guy went part way. He must have forgot his mask. He's going back to the car.
Oh, that fella right over there?
Yeah. Walked over to the driveway, turned around, and came back. I did that the other day. I had to get something over at Lowe's.
Oh, yeah.
And parked the car, walked all the way up the door, suddenly realized I forgot my mask, and it was through the slush and ice and everything. I walk all the way back up there and get the silly mask.
Sometimes you can find one in the store.
There he is, got his mask in his hand, see it?
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them do that. Lowe's has a thing right by the door. It says, if you forgot your mask, please take one.
Yeah.
But they have limits of how many they can put out there, I guess.
It's only fair.
Yeah. They're the ones that demand it, but it's the crazy world concept.
Yeah, that's for sure.
I wear one when I go in out of respect for them, but I don't think it does a bit of good.
No, neither.
And like putting up you know what rabbit wire is? Or sheep wire. I mean, you know what sheep wire is?
No, I don't think so.
It's fencing that they use where they have sheep. Instead of like barbed wire, they'd make old cattle fences out of strands of barbed wire, one about every 8 or 10 inches up the post, you know. The sheep wire is made of wire that's crossed,
Okay.
but it's about 4 or 5 inch squares,
Yeah, I know those.
small enough that sheep couldn't get through them. But do you think it would keep small insects out?
No.
They'd just whiz right through that. It wouldn't even slow them down.
Right.
And I have a feeling that's what these masks do to that virus. That virus is so small it just flies right through it. And they say you stand 6 feet apart, but they say that it'll carry 30 feet through the air or more. So what good does it do to stand 6 feet apart? One guy wrote, I think it was in Los Angeles, they condemned or forbid indoor dining in these restaurants, so they put up tents on the outside. People could sit in there. They only had one entrance in the tent. People were sitting all crowded in these tents eating.
Yeah.
So a lot of good that did.
Yep.
They were probably worse off than if they'd gone inside.
Tents holding moisture.
Yeah.
And I've heard of little children getting sick
Yeah.
because their parents got them in masks for
Yeah.
too frequent, too often.
I see people running down the bike trail running with a mask on. I think a lot of good that does them, and they're just inhibiting their breathing so they don't get a good oxygen.
One of the ones that confuses me is somebody sitting in their car by themselves with a mask on.
Yeah,
Like, hey man, what are you doing over there?
Well, the whole world has just fallen prey to the fear that's come over them, you know.
Yeah.
But boy, I look at the situation the way it's going. Sure seems like we're right in the middle of Matthew 24.
Yeah.
When you see all these things happening, look out, your redemption's near.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I hardly even want to hear anything that's going on.
Well, it's good not to have your head in the sand. You want to know what the enemy's up to.
That's exactly right.
But you don't want to dwell on it too far because it can just get you to thinking the wrong thing. The verse for the day today is in Galatians where it says, if there's anything that's pure or beautiful or right or holy, always think on these things, you know. Or maybe is that Galatians or Philippians? Galatians, I think.
I don't remember.
It says, whatsoever is good and pure and righteous and all that,
yeah,
think on these things. So, by implication, don't spend too much time thinking about what's evil.
Yeah.
That won't lift you up much.
Yeah.
Won't give you something encouraging to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's wise to be aware of what's going on. You don't want them to come up to you. You don't know anything, but you sure don't want to spend too much time on it.
Mm-mm. Yeah, old Joe, he's been locked away for so long.
Who? Oh, yeah. Yeah, pathetic old man. He just needs to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Him and all his cronies.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of hope built into, something going on that was unforeseen, like martial law or something like that.
Yeah. Well, in 1938 was when that crystal knock happened in where was that, Austria or in Germany? Austria, I think, where the Nazis went in there and smashed up all those Jewish stores and stuff. And it was really the beginning of World War II. And at that time, the Lutherans in Germany, it was largely Lutheran. they didn't see any problem with getting rid of the Jews. In fact, Martin Luther had said it was our duty to kill these Jews,
Man, yeah.
the Christ killers. And so the Nazis were largely supported by the population. In fact, Hitler was voted into the chancellery by 98%, something like that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Favor for him. Time magazine marked him as the Man of the Year in 1939. And so he sneaked in on him with a bunch of false promises.
Yeah.
You remember all about the Volkswagen car, what the deal is with that?
Yeah, they said everybody was going to get one, right?
Yeah, it was Porsche that designed it, and it was called the Volkswagen, the people's car. And what they did, they had a deduction from their pay. They could volunteer for it, and when at the end of the war, they'd all get a car.
Oh, buddy.
But the deal was, once you signed up for it, you could not reverse it. So once they signed up for the program, from then on, their pay was taxed, for this deduction. And nobody ever got a car out of it. All went into war effort,
Yeah.
Spent it for material and weaponry and stuff. And, of course, the people were just cheated out of everything.
Yeah.
But Germany was largely highly educated, very intelligent people. They weren't a bunch of country bumpkins. They were, a lot of great things came out of old Germany, and all over Europe, France and everywhere. But they all fell prey to it. And they would have thought that could never happen here, with all their wonderful understanding of everything.
Yeah.
But Americans got this same proud attitude. It can't happen here, but why do we have any guarantee that it couldn't happen here?
Yeah.
Especially when we decided to throw God out of everything.
Yeah.
So
Seems like what's happening here is very similar to what happened with the Brexit not too long ago.
yeah,
Because the people said, this is what we want. And the elite politicians said, that's not what you need.
yeah,
Yeah, but we voted it this way. Yeah, but we're gonna see about that.
yeah,
And they just held on to it for a while
yeah.
and postponed it because they were like, yeah, these people don't know what they're doing,
Yeah.
And I think that's what happened with this election. It's like they knew they couldn't get it honestly, so they had to go ahead and take it.
Well, Israel's going through a lot of the same stuff too,
Yeah, yeah,
getting rid of their conservatives as fast as they can and trying to destroy Netanyahu and voting in all these gay rights things and stuff.
mm-hmm.
And Tel Aviv is the most gay-friendly city in the world, they say. They have big, massive parades there and all that stuff, and gay rights parades. And of all the people that ought to get it straight, you'd think Israel would, wouldn't you? They're the ones who brought us the Torah and all the teaching of the apostles and prophets, and the Lord himself came from there. And they're the ones who turn around and say, we're going to go after the pagans.
Yeah.
I was just reading a while ago about the word shibboleth.
Yeah.
Or shibboleth.
Mm-hmm.
You know about that one.
Yeah.
You know what the word means?
Uh-uh.
It means an ear of corn or a grain of corn.
Really?
Or some kind of a grain.
Mm-hmm.
Which, of course, would represent something good for something to eat. But the people of what was it?
I don't remember the locales. I just remember
The Gileadites. They were the ones east of the Jordan River, and the Ephraimites had gone over into Israel. But when they came back, the Gileadites said, "You joined in with the Canaanites over there. So we don't want you here." So they were crossing the Jordan River at a certain ford where they could cross, and they had Gileadite guards there, and they'd stop them and ask them if you were an Ephraimite, and if they said no, then they'd make them say the word Shibboleth or Shibboleth.
Yeah.
And the Gibeonites, or the Gileadites, I mean, used the word Sheen, Shibboleth. But I think it was the Ephraimites couldn't say it. They said Siboleth.
Yeah.
And when they put the S sign on that, identified them as Ephraimites. They killed 42,000 of them that day. Man, 42,000 died because they couldn't say a word right.
Wow.
But of course, what it was really doing is so the word has come to mean a word that defines your who you are, or identifying word. You know?
Yeah.
So the word has come to mean any word that's used to identify somebody with, kind of like a password or something like that.
Yeah.
But you think here was these people who were people of Israel killing each other over that. And of course, they weren't killing them because they couldn't say the word right. They're killing them because they considered them to be traitors to them. Well, that guy over there's got his lights set on arc welding, doesn't he?
Yeah. They got a bunch of strong lights out there, don't they?
Man.
I saw a guy, a van today. He had a big LED rack on the top of his van.
Yeah.
So in addition to regular lights, he had a big string of them right on the top. It wasn't too bright, but it was.
Those are moose lights.
Very interesting. Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you're traveling at night in a dark highway, whenever you can, if you turn those babies on, you can see what's out in front of you. You know. So, of course, a lot of guys put that kind of stuff on, never use them for anything except just
stay in Anchorage.
Makes them look like they're big tough guys or something, but that's the idea of them anyway. I went fishing with some relatives of Alice's down in, where was it? I believe it was in, where was that? Someplace down in Texas. I think it was on a Gulf. I thought it was down in Texas, and so many years ago, but
Gulf of Mexico?
it could have been.
What was you fishing for?
Well, we're going at night, and we're fishing off the beach, but these guys had some railroad locomotive headlights mounted on a board, and they powered them up, and they shine them out on the water, and they just make a brilliant spot of light on the water, and the fish would come up to that light, and you could cast your bait into that light spot, and you got quite a few fish that way.
Huh.
And they said it was illegal, but they did it anyway, and the game warden apparently didn't bother them, but we caught quite a few fish there that way. Those headlights for a locomotive, those things are like searchlights, you know. They really blaze out there, and they had them mounted on some kind of a board, and they'd plug it into the car battery, and boy, they'd really light up.
I'm tired, Jim. I don't want to fall asleep on you.
That's probably about time to button it up anyway, isn't it?
Well,
Time of night,
we made
isn't
it
it?
through Coof. We've only been about an hour and a half, though.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, what else do you...
But we spent a little bit extra time at the house, too.
That's
so-
right, yeah.
So it's been about our allotted time.
Well, there's a few other scriptures in that you can look up when you want to if you
Okay.
look through it. Places where talking about
19.
either
show up.
19 or 100. You know, one thing about those numbers, they tie together, you know.
Yeah.
Like it'll say that here's number 19 is the 8th prime number,
Uh-huh.
so that connects it to number 8,
Yeah.
and that means new beginnings.
Yeah.
And so, another thing, on the letters, some of them have these little crownlets on them, you know.
Right.
It's called tagging,
Yeah.
and there's 8 letters that have the crowns on them, 8 of them.
Uh-huh.
Now, the only place you don't see them in ordinary writing, but in the Torah scrolls, they put the crownlets on them. Why would they put crowns on 8 letters?
To show the royalty of them.
Yeah. So something about those letters or those numbers, mainly the letters, are defined a very. If you look at what the Lord came to earth, did he come to earth to change water into wine?
No.
But he did that.
Yeah.
Or did he come to earth to still a storm when it looked like it was dangerous to some sailors?
It's just a side job.
But he did that.
Right.
So that's not the royal position. But when he came to seek and save what's lost,
That's right.
and to give new life, that mission gets a crown on it, because there's some things he did that were just evidence that he is who he is. When he healed people and cast out devils and stuff like that, those are all good things that only the king could do. But the royal thing was becoming the sacrifice that takes away the sin and all that. So the letters that have something directly to do with that, got a crown on them. And the crown is made of 3 little things together. If you look at it, almost looks like a picture you'd see of the crucifixion. You one in the middle a little higher and one on each side a little lower. But I'm sure that when they put those in there, the scribes that were writing the Torah scroll didn't think of that
No.
at all. But they put them on to symbolize royalty.
They still put them on.
Yeah. And there's 5 of the letters that have final letters, final versions of them that are when they're at the end of a word,
Yeah.
And I think we talked about that last time. 5 of them, and of course 5 has a meaning to it. 5 is a representative of, it can represent the work of the Spirit, but it almost always represents conflict. When David went after Goliath, he picked up 5 rocks. And of course there is a conflict. When the Lord went to his ministry, was there a conflict?
Yeah. Half of them was conflict.
Well, the Lord himself was warring against the enemy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Tremendous conflict. So David killing Goliath is not about a young guy killing a giant. It's about the Lord himself defeating the demonic spirits that ruled everything. And so 5 of those letters. That picture of Sadi, looks like kind of like a man kneeling down with one arm raised up like he's reaching up to heaven, but in a bowing, humble position. But the final position of him is standing upright with both arms lifted up vertically like he's standing up in victory. And it's a picture of the Lord himself. He humbled himself, went into the place of death, but when he's resurrected, he stands up in victory over death. So the final version, one of the words that define the word 9 was finality. So when the Lord said it's finished, he's in a position now to stand upright and raise his hands because the work is done and it accomplished what he came to do, He says, my words will not return to me void, but they will accomplish what I sent them to. So what's the word?
What, the one for finished?
Well, he says, my word will not fail, and my word will accomplish what I sent it out to do. What is the word that was sent out?
It's finished. It's complete. Forgive them.
Those are words that we think of, but the Lord says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld him. So what's the Word? In the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
Yeah.
And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, so what's the Word?
It's Yeshua.
Yeah. So he said, my words will not return void to me, or they won't come back as failures. They come back as victorious, finished. It was done with. The job got done, and it got done perfectly, completely, and everything. So I've said many times, the Bible is the Word of God, but the Word of God is not the Bible.
That trips them up, doesn't it?
It does. It shocks a lot of people, but when it says the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, not talking about a written word in some book, talking about Yeshua himself, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I say, well, what's the Word of God then? The Word of God is Yeshua.
Yeah.
And the written word is just things written down, and all they're there is to show us who Yeshua really is, aren't they?
Yeah.
The Lord said, these scriptures are about me. So whatever it is that people call the Word of God is only there to show us who the real Word really is. It says the Word of the Lord is sharper than a double-edged sword. Does that mean the Bible is sharp like a sword?
No.
What is it that's sharper than a sword?
The work of the Spirit.
Yeah, and it penetrates to the very inmost part of man. It's not talking about a written book. It's talking about the Lord himself. He is the sword that's sharper than a double-edged sword, And just like when it talks about putting on the armor of God, what's it talking about?
Using him as your protection.
Yeah. So the armor is not anything that can be defined physically. It's the power and strength of the Lord himself. When David went after Goliath, Saul tried to get him to wear Saul's armor. What was the purpose of Saul's armor?
Make Saul feel better.
Well, is that what he put it, just to make him feel better?
No, he put it on for protection. But
it was to protect him, and ordinarily it did protect him, didn't he?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what armor's for. But David said, I can't go after Goliath with this armor because this won't protect me. In fact, it'll be a hindrance to me. The only thing that'll protect me is the armor of God himself. So that's what he went out there with, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so the armor of God is the same purpose as armor of Saul is, to protect. But Saul's armor had a limitation to it. God's armor does not have limitation, does it?
Right.
So it says with that armor you can ward off the enemy's arrows and darts and sword strikes and everything else. It does the job.
Does the trick.
Yeah. I had something else there in mind. It was just dropped off all of a sudden.
You'll remember on the way back to the house.
Maybe.
That was a good cobbler tonight, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was great. Yeah. Oh, I know. In Isaiah 9, it says, to people living in the land of Naphtali and Zebulun, in the area of Galilee, the people who lived in darkness have seen a great light.
Right.
So what's Naphtali and Zebulun?
I forgot. Might have it written in the Bible, though.
Well, both of them were part of the tribes of Israel. There was the tribe of Naphtali, tribe of Zebulun. And Naphtali means my wrestling. My wrestling. Like Jacob wrestled all night with the Lord, remember?
Yeah.
And so what's going on in the land of Galilee where the people are dwelling in darkness? It says the people are dwelling in darkness in the land of Galilee.
Mm-hmm.
What were they doing?
Doing whatever they wanted.
Well, Naphtali means my wrestling.
Were they wrestling with God?
Well,
like Jacob?
What's going on when someone's wrestling?
They're struggling.
Can you...
fighting.
Yeah, you got a fight going on, don't you? You got a battle. I mean, if it's organized sports, it's really not exactly a battle, but it is sort of a battle, isn't it?
Yeah.
And what's the idea? If you're a wrestler, what you trying to do?
Make the other guy yield.
And you're trying to overpower the other guy, aren't you?
Yeah.
And so when people are living in darkness, are they wrestling?
Yeah. Guess so.
What are they wrestling with? Takes two to have a wrestling match, doesn't it?
If they're in darkness, they're wrestling the darkness.
Okay.
They're wrestling the evil one.
Yeah, when darkness represents evil, it represents ignorance, it represents unbelief, idolatry, anything like that you want to think of. Self-righteousness would be part of it. False religion. Plenty of things to wrestle with, right?
Yeah.
Or if, like in Jacob's case, who was Jacob wrestling with?
The Lord.
Well, why was he wrestling?
Huh.
Is he trying to beat
He was
the Lord?
trying to wrestle out a blessing. He was
Somehow
going for a blessing.
So, what was preventing the blessing? Why do you have to fight for it? Remember, he told the Lord, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." Well, what was the holdup here?
I don't know. Because the Lord chose to let him fight him. I don't know, though. I don't have an answer.
A lot of times the thing that prevents the Lord from working is our own unbelief, wrestling with ourselves, trying to fight off the unbelief and trying to fight off the self-righteousness and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Pride, arrogance, so on. So, remember, it says in that story that the Lord struck Jacob on the hip and threw his hip out of joint. And then after that, he walked with a limp for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So the Lord gave him an injury that he never forgot. Could not forget it, because as he walked every time he went, probably caused him a certain amount of pain, or at least he couldn't walk normally. So why would the Lord leave evidence of that struggling match?
Because it was something worth remembering.
That's right. He don't want you to forget. What was it caused you to be not getting the blessing, Jacob? Because you weren't ready
standing in the way of
weren't
yourself.
ready to surrender yet to God. So sometimes the wrestling is a matter of us being unwilling to surrender to God, isn't it? Until we do surrender, we don't get the blessing. But once we do, did Jacob get the blessing?
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. But now that's what Naphtali means. But Zebulun means the dwelling place of glory. Where's the dwelling place of glory?
Where God is.
Yeah, I remember the Psalm 23, the last line of Psalms 23. What does it say?
And I'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
What's the house of the Lord?
That's where God chooses to dwell.
Yeah. Is it a big, beautiful building made of ivory with gold floors or something?
No, it's a building made out of people.
Yeah, it's not even a building, it's people, isn't it?
Yeah, a building is figurative, but it's people.
When they refer to the house, they might say, "This man is of the house of David." What does that mean?
He's David's family.
Yeah, he's part of that lineage of that family. It had nothing to do with a building, does it?
No.
So when it says the house of the Lord, it doesn't mean some big, beautiful castle or something like that. In fact, when it says, "In my Father's house are many rooms, and I've gone to prepare a place for you," what does it mean by the many rooms in the Father's house?
It's probably them 144 that are from all kinds of different tribes.
Okay, yeah.
Nations.
Well, that line has to do with a Jewish wedding, how that works. Before a wedding, the groom would go to his father's place and prepare a place called the bridal chamber, or the room for the bridal.
Yeah.
And then at the proper time, he would be coming back to get the bride and take him to his father's place where the room would be. And that all had to do with the wedding. Remember the story of the wise virgins and the foolish virgins weren't ready for the groom to come, and so they got a lesson there. But so again, when he says he's preparing a place in his Father's house, it doesn't mean a room in a big building, but he means a place in God's family, don't you think?
Yeah.
In other words, even if you're one of these uncountable number, it doesn't matter how many places are in the Lord's family for any of the Lord's people. I mean,
There's always a place.
is he ever going to say, sorry, we're all sold out, no more space?
No.
You know, the last time we heard that was when Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem. That's what they got told, wasn't it?
That's right.
No room, sorry. You'll have to sleep out there in the shed. But you won't hear that from the Lord speaking to his people. There's always room for him there. So there again, Zebulun means the dwelling place of glory. And that's, Isaiah 9 says, to people in the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, in the area of Galilee. And Galilee, by the way, in those days was considered a frontier area. It was like the Wild West, full of outlaws and thugs and crime, nothing good. Remember, it was, Nathaniel said, I think it was, can anything good come out of Nazareth?
Yeah.
You know, that area was considered to be an outlaw country. And it would be highly disrespected by any of the elite in Bethel or in Jerusalem.
Huh.
And so the people there really were living in darkness. But he said and of course, the parable is like a picture of all the Lord's people everywhere in the whole world. The world is a place of darkness. And but a great light has shined. They've seen a great light. So what's the great light?
Lord himself?
Yeah, the Lord says, I'm the light of the world. And so a great light is shining, and it talks about that for a bit, and then it goes on and says, because unto us a child is given, unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. Now, government means whatever's controlling everything, isn't it? So when darkness was over the land, what was controlling the land?
The darkness.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
fear.
Yeah, fear. So you might say fear, or even demonic forces are the government that was controlling the darkness. But when a great light shines, when you shine a great light on a darkness place, what happens to the darkness?
It disappears.
It just disappears. It goes, light just blows the darkness away. So the great light is shining, and now the government will be on his shoulders. Today we look at whatever the world calls government. Do you think it's talking about what Isaiah was talking about? The government will be on the shoulders of the one that's coming to us, the son that's born.
Yeah, you don't want that association, do you?
What we're seeing around the world today is what the world calls government, which is people's ideas based on influence from demonic powers. Certainly not the Lord's idea of government. I think when it says the government be on his shoulders, there's only one real government, just as there's only one real king, isn't there? What's the real government?
The Lord's hand.
When the very word govern, what does govern mean?
To control.
Yeah, control. On a engine, a big diesel engine has a governor on it. What does the governor do?
Regulates.
Controls the RPM of the engine, doesn't it? Or
Yeah.
the load bearing or something. So when the government is on the shoulders of the great light, then what happens to the government of darkness?
It goes away.
Yeah. It looks like we're not there quite yet, do you think?
No,
But it's not very far away, says the Lord. Said, look up, your redemption's near. The light will shine on the world. It has shined even in the individual. The Lord says the light has shined into your heart if you've responded to the Lord positively. So there is light for the Lord's people, but it doesn't come from the world's government, doesn't it?
right.
It can't, because they only radiate darkness, but it comes from the great light. And of course, Isaiah
good
put a
news.
title on that great light. 5 descriptive words.
Mighty,
Wonderful.
wonderful, Counselor,
Yeah.
Prince of Peace,
Mighty God,
Mighty God,
Everlasting Father,
Everlasting
Prince of Peace. So which one of them is Yeshua?
All of them.
All of them, yeah. All of them. And
That's good news.
Imagine a government that's called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace.
Not anything we've seen.
Couldn't call the Washington, D.C. that, could you? Or even the Knesset in Israel is not that. But you can certainly call Yeshua that. Right now, he hasn't fully taken possession of all this, although it belongs to him, but he will. And when he does, what will happen to all these evil things?
Disappeared.
They will disappear.
That'll be good.
Seems like can't be too far away.